Welcome to St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
It actually starts off okay. Over time, it's like boiling a frog. You know what I mean? You don't realize it until it's too hot.
The magic. You're trying to create the magic, and then you realize there's no way any magic's coming from us right now.
Oh no, I'm just a drug addict. Oh dang.
Was it for the art? Is that what your thinking was?
That was the lie.
And you can begin to believe that you have to have the alcohol to be creative. Ken, what got into you? And I said, what do you mean? They said, you've never played this well before.
Honestly, I feel like I have written some of the most deep, emotive stuff since then.
I'm Elaine Cha. A rapper, writer, and a jazz trombonist walk into a bar and order seltzers. Not the hard kind, but the old-fashioned sort with zero booze. That's because these two artists, who make music of very different genres and come from different generations, share an experience that's common among musicians, misusing alcohol or other substances, yet distinct, deciding to stop for the sake of their careers and their personal lives. There's no way or no one way sobriety sounds for musicians who quit substance use, but here's a sample of how it hit for St. Louis rapper and writer Daemon in his 2020 song, Turn the World Around.
Movies where the villain's a cop and the superhero dealing with hard knocks, but so what? Like everything that you think you not, you might be with a singular plot twist, but so what? Don't believe that you lost shit, you know what? You go from heathen to boss quick, but slow up to forever last like a heavy bag. I be chilling while you killing for the feeling I already have. You've been the percent of your image is dim and so listen, your glow up is the best weapon to blow up. Admire everything better than yours, like a petty king ready for warpath, but so what? I got what you want, I promise. I'm not gonna front, I promise, though, let's go. I got what they can't unlock, and I rock with you when I drop it, though, let's go. I got something they can't knock it, I got something they can't top it, though, let's go. We love it, but that's the folks. I'ma keep it 300, we extra, though, let's go. Can't be stopped, gotta get out the box. Can't be stopped, better get out the way. Can't be stopped, gotta get out the box. Can't be stopped, better get out the way.
That's the first song writer and rapper Daemon Murray, who goes by Daemon, wrote as a sober artist. And he joins us today to talk about that ongoing journey. Daemon, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, you told us you didn't just hit rock bottom, that you were living rock bottom. Tell us where you were and what you were doing when you realized that was happening.
I wish it was like a movie moment, but it was more of like a succession of moments. I guess the closest thing was I was in LA and I had just finished doing some work and I was just in LA. Like I was just in this cheap motel getting high, like doing nothing, and my publishing company hit me up about some job. I can't even remember what it was. I was so high. And so I had to go back to St. Louis. And I went back and met with my producer. We worked on a song, and I was in the process of doing that. And I just went home, and I had all these bottles that I had brought back with me from Los Angeles that I assumed I was going to drink at some point, and I still haven't. And I just remember sitting in my room, and there's this come down after 2 or 3 days of, I don't know if I should say what I was using on the air, but this is a come down moment. A friend knows what I'm talking about. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm going to kill myself if this continues.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to die. Like I wasn't suicidal.
Right.
It just takes over. It creeps in over time,
Well, we think of living and dying as being like singular moments, but
Right.
It's stretched over time. As a working musician, Daemon, how did you function at that level?
Artistically, I function fine, but I think you make the sacrifice of not being a functioning human being, it's really a lot like the movies. The one thing the movies get right is the way addicts behave. I mean, movies get a lot of stuff wrong, but even down to the script of like, I don't have a problem, everything's cool,
Right.
but just the isolation, the dishonesty, like no relationships with your family and friends. Really, it was just like, you get a job or you get an idea, that would become an excuse to go buy whatever you needed, and you
Right.
just spend time in the studio working. So as an artist, I mean, I was doing great, and people are like, man, where do you come up with this stuff? And then that feeds the dragon too, so it becomes secular. So you're cutting off the people who might give you advice to do something better, to maintain this flow, and then other people that are in your life as a creative, they don't do it on purpose, but they're feeding your ego, and so you think you're functioning at the
Just
highest
right,
level.
right.
You really are, but over time it erodes, I guess.
And why did you stay there as long as you did? Was it for the art? Is that what your thinking was?
That was the lie. That was what was so fun about it, or so such BS was that the lie is that it is about the art. I'm not an addict. I'm a tortured creative. I'm a genius that the world just hasn't heard yet. And you're like, no, man, you're just a blankhead. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just a drug addict, and it digs itself after a while.
Now, before we move further, we have another guest here on his own journey of making music as a sober artist, and that's John Covelli, a St. Louis trombonist and band leader of the Hard Bop Messengers. John, we're so glad you're here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, hearing Daemon describe his experience of not just hitting, but being rock bottom, did that in any way remind you of what you went through, especially this blackout story from 2013?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, that last year of my drinking career was, I was starting to get signals that I couldn't drink like other people, but I did not really understand the words around that until I did come into the program. But I had been thinking about trying to play music without drinking, and then going home from a gig wondering, how did I get so drunk, and what am I going to tell my wife, because I had said I wasn't going to drink tonight. And so the last few months were just met with lots of lying about it and not performing well, but I really didn't understand what the impact was until that blackout.
And what happened with that blackout? What is the story there?
Well, the Cardinals were in the World Series, which means the band can't play until the game is over, but you get to drink for free.
Oh,
So they had my favorite beer on tap, and so of course I started with scotch. And I was drinking too much, and the band, we started to play, and somewhere in that first set I eased out. Didn't really remember anything after that until I woke up or came to the next morning and realized that I didn't remember anything.
yeah.
I wasn't that it was foggy. I lost that time. I had to ask people. I had lost my trombone, lost my wallet, but my wife, who greeted me when I somehow made it home, she was very angry, and I did not know why.
Yeah.
And that was that.
Did that incident reveal something to you, John, about why you started drinking the way that you did in the first place?
Well, I thought that I had to drink and use drugs to feel comfortable, to release me from the stage anxiety that I thought I had, which I do have. But I thought that drinking and drugging, before I go to rehearsal or before I play with the band was going to make me better and more at ease, to be a better version of who I was. And it never really did help. It only made things worse. And so coming away from that, I would think, why did I do that? I didn't intend to do that, but there I was again, and I don't know how I got there.
Right. So, Daemon, you were nodding as
No.
John was talking. mean, what place or role did alcohol or drugs have in the music scenes that you've been part of over the years?
Oh, wow. I mean, it's front and center. It's part of it, you know. I think it's gotten better in recent years. The younger generation, the kids younger than me, they seem to have a bit of a better grasp on it, which is so ironic because the music seems to be so much more obsessed with it, especially in hip hop. But I mean, yeah, it's just like, you know, you smoke a little something before you. It's the same thing John says. Smoke a little bit before you write, before you record. It's supposed to relax you. It's supposed to, you know, let you get loose. And so much about recording, especially and live performance, is about the vibe and the energy. It's the intangible. So you're always searching for that place, you know, balance, and it's sneaky. It actually starts off okay, and it's just over time, you know, it's like boiling a frog. You know what I mean? You just don't realize it until it's too hot. You know?
The magic. You're trying to create the magic, and then you realize there's no way any magic's coming from us right now.
Oh no, I'm just a drug addict. Oh dang.
It's a very different place to be.
Yeah.
Now, each of you did see success as, you know, non-sober artists. So, I mean, people could assume that it worked for you somehow, right? Especially as each of you were continuing to build your careers. As you look back on the before period, John, is there something that alcohol or other substances helped you to manage, not just the anxiety about being on stage? Did it help you to manage or deal with anything that had to do with sort of the social culture around you?
Well, it helped me manage my feelings of myself. My feelings of failure were real, and but it was distorting the way I saw myself, and it was actually keeping me from enjoying what was going on in the moment. You know, I've heard this phrase, and it's so true. I had one foot in the past, and I had the other foot in the future, and I was ruining the present. And that's exactly what I'd been doing.
Mm-hmm. And Daemon, how about you?
I hate to say, I might be a little bit of the opposite. I think I'm not trying to tell kids, hey, kids, go out there and get you some drugs. But I mean, I think I was better at being present at, you know, when I use, like now it's just like they say raw dog in reality. Like that's just where I'm at now. But I prefer this because I have a relationship with my family and I can, you know what I'm saying, enjoy things again. So, I mean, there are moments where you kind of miss the euphoria of like being really high or really drunk and hearing a song of yours, and you can just hear like he said, John said, the magic of it. Whereas now all I hear is the nuts and bolts. Like I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I said that phrase quite right. I missed this part. Oh, the rhythm isn't. But it's made me a better artist now because now I'm much more aware of it. You know, you're building watches, and so some people can see like a beautiful Rolex, but me, all I see are like the little gears behind the face that makes it function. So
it is complicated.
Yeah. So we're going to take a very quick break, but before that, I'd like to play a voicemail we got from John Sauer. And I'd like to give our guests, Daemon Murray and John Covelli, a chance to respond when we return.
I love music and have always loved music my whole life and spent many years of my life following the Grateful Dead from town to town. Also, I went to drama school and got a master's of fine arts in acting, and I spent 10 years in the professional theater and 7 years in the professional theater in New York City. So I was around a lot of creative people, actors, writers, playwrights, etc., and a lot of alcohol. I would find myself, you know, before a 9 o'clock in the morning audition, I would find myself at 6 o'clock in the morning drinking in a bar in Manhattan, self-destructing. I drank and drugged for 35 years, and my sobriety date is January 21st, 2005. I believe that when we look around and we look at so many creative people in history, that creative impulse legitimately and authentically comes from a place of suffering. And you can begin to believe that you have to have the alcohol to be creative, to express yourself and your emotions. But in reality, in the long run, what it does is it begins to chip away at that creativity, and eventually it destroys it.
That was St. Louis County resident John Sowers speaking about his experiences with creative sobriety. We need to take a quick break, and I'd like to give our guests a chance to respond when we return. And here's a bit of John Covelli's trombone solo in Traffic Both Ways. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. Welcome back. I'm Elaine Cha. We're picking up our conversation about sobriety in music making with trombonist and band leader John Covelli of the Hard Bop Messengers and rapper and writer Daemon Murray, who goes by Daemon. Before the break, we heard voicemail from a St. Louis County resident who talked about following the Grateful Dead on tours as well as his professional experience in New York as an actor. He spoke about the artistic experience as one that originates in a place of suffering. Now, coming in from the break, we played your trombone solo from Hard Bop Messenger's song, Traffic Both Ways. That is a song made and played sober. It's from last summer's album, Live at the Last Hotel, and it definitely did not suggest pain or suffering. So do you think that the caller, though, has a point about artistic expression and hardship?
Well, yeah, the lyrics for that song I wrote about myself trying to walk to the gig and cross the street without killing myself, thinking I could make it in between cars because I'm late for the gig and I'm thinking about lots of other things. And that's what the lyrics in that song are about. It's really the only song on the album that I think I drew from myself and my obsessive compulsive disorder and how it has me thinking about just about everything else but what's happening right here and now, like crossing the street. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'll kill myself if I walk in front of the bus.
Right.
The pain and suffering, I totally agree with Mr. Sauer who called in that you think that you need to suffer and pull from that suffering, like the tortured artist archetype, because from an early age, that's who, John Lennon, tortured artists, that's who I admired and who I thought I had to be like to be worthy. But making that album in sobriety, 8 years into sobriety, I think I was at the time, there I was having to listen to myself and be okay with this music I had just made because I couldn't redo any of it, and I couldn't take a drink or do drugs to help me deal with the sound I was hearing. It was what it was, and I had to accept it.
We've got Ken from Benton Park who's got something to add to our conversation. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I was a studio musician in Boston for a record company back in the early 80s, and I would always get high before I went into play. When we had a really early session, it was the only time we could get in there. It was like 6:30 in the morning. And so I didn't get high first. Played what I was supposed to play, and both the producer and the engineer were staring at me through the window, and I said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "You've never played this well before." And so I never did it again.
It's beautiful.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. There is some maybe sheepish laughter of recognition coming from each of you. Daemon, what elicited that response for you?
I mean, just the song we played earlier, Turn the World Around. I remember I was in recovery. I was just at home with my family, and I couldn't walk. Like, I couldn't get out of bed. and my producer, Steve Spiffler, sent me the track. He lives in Stockton, California. Big shout out to Steve. And he sent me the song, and I started writing it, and it was just a note to myself, like, I'm going to get through this, I'm going to be okay. And I called an Uber to take me to Shock City. I had my friends help me in the car. I had the engineer help me into the studio booth. I had to sit and record it. And when I sent it over to my A&R to listen to, I'm thinking they're gonna hate it. It's the first thing I've written sober. I can barely walk. And the offices went crazy. They were like, "What is this?" They just went nuts. And it was the quickest placement I ever gotten. It got on Xbox Forza Horizon 5. I think ESPN just used it for SportsCenter this morning. I mean, and it was the first thing I've written sober in years. So it just, yeah. Big shout out to Ken.
And John, this is bringing some things up for you, right?
It's okay, man.
Yeah. And this is all part of journeys that you continue to be on. You know, John, you've said it's been 8 years, but each day it must be... it's a new day to win.
For
but
sure.
there are perils as well, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to what you have just shared, Daemon, about Turn the World Around, that song is dope.
Thank you.
I lived in LA before I moved here. I used to go to like a Funky Soul, and it reminded me so much of a kind of exuberance that I always appreciated. And that song does not have any outstanding notes of darkness at all. So do you really think that it was sobriety that did that for your work?
I think technically yes, because just getting in the headspace of just I don't think that the idea is about suffering. I think it's about overcoming the suffering. I think it's still all about joy at the end of it, but it's how do we derive the joy? Where does the joy come from? Like, if you watch a movie, you don't want to just see the hero. He just wins at the beginning, and then you're just like, all right, so what's the rest of the 2 hours?
There's nothing interesting about it then.
Going on.
Right.
So I think what we're looking for is that joy of overcoming. And sometimes you just get trapped in the suffering, and then it becomes about suffering. But it's like your love for John Lennon was his art in spite of his suffering. It wasn't like, oh, he dresses like a bum and he's just awful. That's the end of it. It's like, but he makes this beautiful music in spite of the pain. Kurt Cobain's the same way. Tupac, all of our favorites. But that's the joy of the beauty in it. So Turn the World Around is fun against the backdrop of I can't walk. I don't know if I'm going to be any good without the drugs and alcohol. I'm scared crapless. You know what I'm saying? That's where I think where it comes from, or the fun of it comes from.
John, when you were talking earlier about your wife greeting you at the door, which you had to be told about after that blackout incident in 2013, she was there for you. She had your back. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine that deciding to give up alcohol, that might have done things to some of the relationships that you had with peers, with producers, bandmates. Was there a disconnect and maybe a reconnect process with people in certain circles that had to do with the music making that you were doing?
For sure. I had to come to terms with who I was as a person and a musician. But it's taken me this many years to really get past a lot of me being in my own way. Like the gentleman on the phone said, I have been beating myself up for many, many years. And there's a book I'm working through now by Dan Rubright called A Musician's Dilemma, which has really taught me that, I have a big stick that I'm beating myself up with, and I really need to step back and see what I have that I could enjoy about my musicianship and about music itself. That I've been blessed, with skills that other people aspire to or idolize. And for me to not have been enjoying that this whole time is really, really sad, but I can change that now by enjoying every moment that I can pick up my instrument and play just one note that might sound wonderful and feel the joy that's bringing out.
So sobriety has not only changed the music, it's also changed time. And what's happening
Time
with
and my
it.
perception of time.
Yeah, yeah. Daemon, now lots of shows nowadays, including the one you're playing this weekend, are sponsored by the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you even joke about it on Instagram. What's it been like to navigate that as a musician who's been sober, for a shorter period of time, but that's the decision that you've made for yourself?
I think for me it's been fine because I had such a reputation beforehand, but I can imagine someone who's just straight edge the entire time is probably more difficult. Like, people don't question me as much. I get some jokes about being a cop every once in a while, but I mean, but because I've been so I've been so like outgoing about it. Like, I was almost proud of my drug use. So it was just so in everyone's face. I think people are just happy that I've turned the corner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's been cool for me. And it makes, like you said, it makes for great social media content because it's like, I like to make it understated because I think so much of the sober movement or so much of the push is like professionals and therapists, which is great. But a lot of people don't have access to that, or there's a stigma against it, especially in my neighborhood or like my part of the world. So I just want to make it seem okay, and then also give people like, I don't know, someone to just, I get a lot of DMs from people who want to get sober or want to turn that corner but don't quite know how. And they just want to have someone to talk to who's really just listening more than saying anything. Just like, oh yeah, I totally get you, bro.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't know, it's been kind of freeing, but I can imagine that experience is going to be different for every person.
Right. I mean, we're looking at a very different environment now because marijuana is legal in many more places, and
it's not treated.
Here.
The stigma isn't quite the same.
It's not quite the same. John, over the years, how have you managed performing at clubs or events that prominently feature alcohol, like sponsored by Bacardi and that sort of thing?
I'm just thinking about it less and less every year. At first I had just started playing with a band, and I really wanted to be out playing, and yet I was getting sober, and I just had to face it quick that what was more important, playing the music or being around a bar. I just kind of got used to it, and had people that had my back. In that very first band that I was playing with, they would go to the bar for me and get my club soda for me. And I thought that was pretty special. And I thought, well, I can't let them down. I can do this. If they can do that for me, I can do it for myself.
Yeah. So those kinds of supports, have you also experienced that, Daemon?
I would say, like, for me, alcohol was the sister to my problem. So it's never really been. It wasn't the spark for me. So it's other things. So they don't have a bar for what it is I was using. So thank God. So the
Not yet.
The problem, not yet, oh Lord. So the problem is different. So I can imagine, it's like people trying to quit smoking. And I smoked at the time too, but quitting smoking was like, oh yeah, I also quit smoking. And my friends who smoke are like, what? To them, that's insane. But it was like, nah, bro, that was just like, that was there. It was an aperitif. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't, you know what I mean? So for me, it's been, like, the experience has been vastly different. So but I mean, people have been really supportive, because once you kind of, especially because rap is so competitive, that the people who want to see you do bad, you're not friends with them anyway, because they make it known they hate your guts and they talk bad about you. So you're not really around them. So so the rest of the crew, they're just, as long as you're, doing right by yourself. I have also noticed that my lack of use has softened other people around me. Like, it's kind of like a rising tide lifts all boats, but in the opposite direction. So the less booze I'm drinking, then these people are like, all right, well, I'm not going to drink today either then. And then next thing you know, we're all not drinking. that day, so.
Draining your own swamp.
Yeah, there you go.
So when it comes to the music itself, is the music that you both made, respectively, from those, darker times, do you still find that relatable today? Do you hear it differently now?
The music that I played once, it sounds just as bad as it ever has, and but I knew it was bad then too, because I was super critical of my own self. And there's a book that I have the book that a substitute would read in one of the bands that I played with, and there was a note on one page of a song that said, "If you're subbing for John, then you know that by this time he'd be really drunk, and hopefully you aren't." It was really written in the book,
okay.
so like people around me knew that there was a better version of me out there somewhere.
Well, I hope that we get a chance to hear even more of this music as your journeys continue. And we're really glad that you came in today. Daemon's new single, Make It Make Sense, is streaming on all platforms. You can see him this weekend on the lineup with Styles P at Red Flag this Saturday, March 11th. Daemon, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm way up so I can't hear. That's a flex. I stay up while they stay there. That's a bet. I'm outside, ain't got time for you. You online, you gon' lie to the readers. I don't play the sideline like reporters. That's okay, you gon' die full of ether. So drink up, laced with the illness. Made them pass out of space in the building. When I black out, I'ma break your civilians. Live I back down till I make me a million.
John Covelli plays trombone with his band Hard Bop Messengers. They're playing a show of all Grateful Dead music on Friday, April 7th at Blue Strawberry. John, thanks too for being here.
Thank you so much.
Before we go, the famous saxophonist Wayne Shorter died in Los Angeles last week at the age of 86. The 12-time Grammy Award winner played alongside other legends including Miles Davis, Carlos Santana, and Herbie Hancock. He died surrounded by his family on Thursday. As it happens, John Covelli has an album of all Wayne Shorter tunes called Wayne Shorter Tribute. So here's John playing a trio version of the Hard Bop Messengers, sending us out with the Shorter standard, Infant Eyes. More reporting from the St. Louis on the Air team is available at stlonair.show. Be sure never to miss a conversation by subscribing to our podcast. You can find St. Louis on the Air on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts on the App Store. St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Thank you all for listening today. I'm Elaine Cha.
In hell on the floor with a crayon. Ghost in the shell, I perform in a seance. I broke the spell, the thoughts that they prey on. Others can't control a soul full of chaos. American gods, the devil is born and heaven is torn apart. When I settled the score, developed the form of man, but never been more different. A metaphor for killing, never before witnessed.
This episode was produced by Aaron Dorr.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron.
Our production intern is Avery Rogers.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyter.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Our podcast proudly supports St. Louis artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.